Hello everybody and welcome to the Whiskey Dictionary, where I do the research to try to teach you a little something about what you're drinking. Tonight I'm really excited to be bringing you my very first American whiskey. It's from a distillery in Rhode Island called Sons of Liberty, and this bottle in particular is called Uprising. It's 92 proof and 100% malted barley. So let's get into it. If this is your first time with the channel and you like whiskey reviews, informational videos, or just general whiskey knowledge, make sure to click that subscribe button so you don't miss anything. Now, if you are from outside the US, or perhaps you have forgotten your junior high history lesson because maybe you drink a little too much, then let me remind you who the Sons of Liberty actually are. So it was a group of colonists who were against British taxation, basically. And they had some real figureheads in their group, like Benjamin Franklin. So they were founded to battle the Stamp Act, essentially. That was their major thing. And in fact, they were also responsible for orchestrating the whole Boston Tea Party. Now, if you've ever heard the phrase, no taxation without representation, that was them. Now, after the Stamp Act was repealed in 1765, they actually disbanded. But the name kind of carried on, with many different revolutionary groups kind of claiming it as their own whenever they would do something against the British government. So, what does this have to do with whiskey? Well, Mike Rapucci, who is the founder, president of the Sons of Liberty Distillery, he kind of had this in mind when he started up his distillery. Basically, he saw what everybody else was doing. You know, it's the typical entrepreneur. You see what everybody else is doing, and you come up with a new idea. So he said, well, whiskey is basically beer when it starts off. They take a diverging path at one point, but it's just basically beer. Now, most places don't make beer that you'd actually really want to drink. So he kind of went the other way, and instead he made good beer and then distilled it into whiskey. So that is where this comes from. This is actually a stout beer that was distilled into whiskey. So let me tell you a little bit more about this particular bottle. Now, the Sons of Liberty, despite their size, actually have a couple of different mainline offerings. They have the Uprising, they have the Battle Cry, and then they have what they call seasonal whiskeys. Now, the women up here love their Uggs, their yoga pants, and their pumpkin coffee, but they also love their pumpkin beer. And this distillery saw that people love pumpkin beer and just generally flavored beers. So they went with kind of the idea that nobody's doing seasonal whiskeys. Now, because it's an American whiskey, it actually doesn't have to age quite as long as most other types of whiskey. So they were able to have that quick turnover. And they actually have this one video that I saw while researching this, where they were really like scooping out pumpkins. They had their whole family kind of helping them. It was pretty cool. And anyway, so this particular bottle is an American Single Malt, and it is distilled from a stout mash, which means that it's either 100% roasted malt or 100% roasted barley. And actually, one really cool thing, and what kind of made me decide to do this video, they sent me a bottle of beer that actually this comes from. And I actually had a friend over, and we did kind of like a matchup of both the bottle and the whiskey. We had the bottle first, kind of divided it in half, and then we had the whiskey. And it was really cool to do the beer and then the whiskey that came from it. So anyway, I've belabored this point too long. I can't wait to get into this nosing and tasting. So let's do that. All right, so let's go ahead and pour some of this. Nice hefty pour. All right, so let's give this a nose. Now, look at that color. It is very similar to a bourbon in color here, and that's from the new oak barrels that it's put into. So, all right. Go ahead and inhale deep on this one. You're not going to get any burn off of 92. So you've got a kind of like, almost like chocolate covered cherries, actually. I think that nails it, actually. It's almost perfect. So yeah, I'm gonna go chocolate covered cherries with a little bit of like coffee bean, but not nearly as strong as coffee tends to be. I drink a lot of coffee. So I'm gonna leave it at that. I think that nails it, just chocolate covered cherry. All right, cheers. And the one thing I'll say about the taste is, much like a stout, I think you need to like bold flavors to really have that as good as some of the others. So like, don't get me wrong, it is far from bad. It's just, it's a very it bites you, definitely in the throat. But all right, let's actually kind of taste this a little bit more. Hold on. Well, the coffee comes out a lot more in the flavor, but little bit of cherry in there. You know what this tastes like? So you know how like if you have a really high dark chocolate, like really high cacao percent, like let's say like 75 or 80, it's almost like that, where it's so dark that it gets sweet again. I would say that kind of nails this. And once again, that's just kind of that dark chocolate with the cherry in it. So I think this is a very good whiskey. Let me see, if I'm gonna give it a rating. So, you know, I typically do my ignore it, try it, buy it, and stock it. I'm gonna give this one right between a buy it and a try it. I think because this actually has done very well on the world stage, I think you owe it to yourself to probably buy a bottle. It's actually fairly cheap too, it's like mid-40s. The one thing I will say is that you're probably gonna start seeing this all over the country. The distillery is growing, you know, they're getting more and more business, and in general their stuff is getting a lot more popular. They won this award, I think it was this year, for something about world whiskey. Basically they did really well, and they're going to start getting popularity. Actually, I was just at the liquor store earlier tonight buying a completely different bottle for the live stream that's coming out. Actually, if you're watching this on Friday, it would have been 2 days ago, J&B Rare. And yeah, I know, I didn't want to. But anyway, while I was there, I saw, you know, there were signs that said that this was a winner, and it was awesome. And actually, I completely agree. I really do think that this is a very good whiskey. The only reason that I'm sounding hesitant is because the next bottle that I'm going to be reviewing from this group, I actually like a lot better. So when I'm comparing the two, it's harder for me to suggest this one over the Battle Cry, and look for next week's video on Battle Cry. That's going to be, like, if you see it at your store between now and then, pick it up, because that's another one that you really probably are going to want to drink along with me during the video. So yeah, I'm going to give this one my official rating. I'm going to bump it up to a buy it. I think that you will love this if you buy it. So that does it for this week's episode of the Whiskey Dictionary. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you have a great rest of your night.